to the Toes Online podcast. I'm your host, Gio Grassi, and today I'm bringing you from Fordham University, dead smack in Gotham City, a.k.a. the Bronx, New York, Coach Joe Gilfedder, who was my former boss. I probably still look at him the same way. Great friend. I like to call him a friend now because I currently left Fordham, FYI. That's a spoiler. Coach Gil, thanks for finally hopping on the podcast, man. We've been talking about this for a long time. How you feeling, man? How's things going out there in the Bronx?
They're going well. Summer training's wrapping up in about one more week before we start football camp. And then all of our sports are going to start coming back, gearing up for this fall season. But it's funny that now, we're in two different spots talking about strength and conditioning on the podcast, whereas you used to be, 15 feet away. So it's funny how it works out, but it's going to be fun regardless.
Yeah, we had a live session podcast going on every day. Now we get to record one.
Exactly.
But Coach, take some time to, talk about yourself, where you're from, sports you played, where you studied, strength and conditioning wise, how you got to Fordham University, man.
Absolutely. So I grew up in New Jersey, Berkeley Heights, New Jersey. Went to Governor Livingston High School, played football, did track and field, baseball, basketball. So all the kind of traditional sports. After high school, went to Ithaca College and played 4 years of football up there for Ithaca College Bombers. After college, in college, I studied exercise science, and I always kind of knew that I wanted to be in strength and conditioning. It was always a passion of mine. And I think it started when first of all, you hear about athletic training and you're like, oh, okay, I can train athletes. And then you learn that, okay, athletic training is a completely different profession and major in and of itself. And you get introduced to exercise science and learning about anatomy and physiology and learning about exercise physiology and biomechanics and neuromuscular control and all those cool classes. And being able to get exposed to all that at Ithaca College was awesome. I had a lot of great professors there that really helped develop me and learn a lot of those basics, and then try and apply some of those things to my own training. One of the things I kind of laugh about is we didn't have a strength and conditioning coach at Ithaca College, so we were pretty much on our own in regards to training. And to be honest with you, it was probably a good thing because I might have been too much of a hot-headed 18 to 22-year-old that I don't know if I necessarily would have listen to the strength and conditioning coach if I was someone who had maybe read something different or believed something different. So it's probably better that I had to kind of figure it out on my own. And I think it also helped me grow into a strength and conditioning coach now. So after Ithaca College, 4 years of that, I took 1 year in between where I was actually a line cook. Believe it or not a very good cook, but I was a line cook for a year. And then luckily, I was admitted into Springfield College's strength and conditioning graduate program, where I was able to really learn and intern under some of the hungriest strength and conditioning professionals and really be kind of led in the right direction by Dr. Brian Thompson, who still to this day I try and keep in contact with. And I thank him and try and tell him how grateful I am for the opportunities and the direction he pointed all of us to, because he really facilitated anything that we really wanted to do and really tried to help all of us get to where we wanted to get. So I'm going to be forever indebted to Brian Thompson and Springfield College. And even though I only spent 2 years there, it does feel like home, just as much as Ithaca College would feel like home being 4 years there. After Springfield College, I was very, very lucky to get a job at Dartmouth College. And Dartmouth College, I was able to work with men's basketball, assist with football, and then a whole host of other teams that you normally would not be able to coach. So I coached sailing, I coached heavyweight rowing, lightweight rowing, women's rowing. I worked with squash. I worked with equestrian, along with more traditional sports with the soccers and the lacrosses and the footballs and the basketballs. I was able to get exposed to different sports that you don't necessarily get to train every day. So being able to coach different athletes, different mindsets, male, female, everybody, that was very, very valuable. And I spent 3 years there up in New Hampshire. And then March 12th, 2018, I still remember it to this day. That was my first day coming down here to take the job at Fordham. So I've been here just over 3.5 years. And it's kind of funny how the world goes round, because my dad grew up a few blocks from here in the Bronx. My mom grew up in Brooklyn. I was only about 30 minutes away. I grew up in New Jersey. And when my dad would take me to Yankee games, and I was like 5, 6, 7 years old, I was always like, I want to live in the city. I want to live in the city. I want to live in the Bronx, and we were big Yankee fans, always have been, always will be. It's funny kind of how it takes till, 2018 to actually, for that to come to fruition and actually happen. So very, very lucky. And it's, being able to work with guys like you, guys like Joshua Greer and Steven Giorgio, it's really helped me develop as a coach, and it's been awesome. I can't wait for it to keep going too.
Yeah. You got to be tough to live in the Bronx too, right?
Absolutely, man. That's one thing I learned is that Bronx is a whole nother animal in regards to, life in the Bronx. But I love it, man. It's such a unique place. Like there were times in the beginning of the job, I don't know if I ever told you about this, but I would, you can get flustered. You can kind of get overwhelmed with the responsibility, particularly me being a first-time director. What I would do is I would just go walk down Arthur Avenue, being able to have that right in our backyard. And even though it's a hectic area, it was something that where you can just walk, you can breathe, you can see people from all over the world, different food, different shops, different, just everything. And that was kind of a way for me to kind of decompress, was to walk down Arthur Avenue, the Bronx Zoo right here, the Botanical Garden. I've probably been to the Bronx Zoo 3 or 4 times in the last 3.5 years. Me and my girlfriend will go there and enjoy some of the exhibits and, pet the sloths, or, we were able to get an up close encounter with porcupines and parrots and armadillos and stuff like that. So it's been, it's fun. It's a unique place, man, but you do have to be tough.
Yeah. I should have went to the Bronx Zoo more, man. I should have taken more advantage of that stuff. I'm soft now, man. I'm a Jersey Shore guy, man. I'm soft as how I drive speed limit now.
You're a lot of things, Gio, but you're definitely not soft, man.
I appreciate that, man.
You're as tough as they come. So the zoo, though, is like, it really is a gold mine as far as just being able to see things, man, like that just not a lot of people get to see. And the Botanical Garden, if you do ever, obviously you'll be back.
I've never been there. Yeah.
I'll definitely make sure that I'll get you back. But when you come back with the wife, one of the things is good is they have the train show during the holidays.
Okay.
And they do this exhibit, man, where they make all this, like, they almost recreate New York City, like Bronx, Brooklyn, Manhattan. And they do it from like literally like leaves and sticks and rocks. And the artistry that went into this exhibit at the Botanical Garden was like unbelievable.
I never heard of that.
Yeah, train show every year during the holidays.
Train show, really, huh? Cool. Damn. Yeah, that's another. The Botanical Gardens right across the highway, right across the street, man. I don't know why I never took a trip there, man. I'm corny as hell, man, with that stuff. That commute got me. That commute got the best of me, man.
See, I just talked about how much of a Yankees fan that I am.
Ain't never been to a game yet.
Down here, I haven't gone to one Yankee. So, like, while I am a Yankees fan, you can never convince me that to root for any other team. But I got to get to the Yankee game. But, we got thrown off by COVID a little bit. And we all get busy doing stuff. So we don't necessarily take advantage of the city, even though it's right in our backyard. Sometimes you just get, I don't know. You think about traveling somewhere else when in reality, you've got the best city in the world right here.
Yeah, right. Exactly. It's funny because we're down here in the Jersey Shore now. And it's like, I haven't even been to the beach yet. It's like, what the hell am I doing?
It's literally right there. But yeah, it's almost like you think about what's on the other side versus what you have right there.
What's right in front of you. Yep.
That happens in everything. But yeah, I got to get to a Yankee game. I got to get back to the Garden. Yeah, there's so much good around here.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Bronx, Coach, I want to stay on that topic now because training wise, Fordham University, we became known as Ford Hamstring University. Social media knows it. ESPN won't acknowledge it. That's all right. We'll get there one day. But people have been hitting me up. They've probably been hitting you up, Coach Greer, Coach Giorgio, about the Bronx Curl, which is essentially a single leg Nordic. But we call it the Bronx Curl because if the Bulgarians can take the split squat, we'll take that. But yeah, talk about the posterior chain development in itself, including the Nordics, the GHRs and all that stuff. People like to get fancy and sexy, but I want to talk more about the Nordics because I think we did a great job. I think you did an outstanding job programming it and progressing it over time.
To be honest with you, the Nordic Curl is something that I kind of became infatuated with as a GA at Springfield College.
Okay.
And there was a joke that I used to have with Scott Leach, who was a really good friend of mine, and he was a GA at Springfield as well, there was a few things that you can go to the bank on. And one was that, peanut butter and jellies get you stronger, and the Nordic Curl is a must in all programs. So I've always kind of been infatuated with the Nordic Curl and its ability to decrease hamstring injury. We've all seen the studies that show like a 51% decrease in hamstring injury if you can have proficient Nordic Curl strength and ability. And I think it's an exercise so hard that you and I and everyone else here, we had to be creative in our progressions and regressions of the movement. We valued the ability for many of our athletes, whether they were close to 300 pounds or, 130-pound runner on the track team, to be proficient in our posterior chain strength for both injury prevention as well as athletic performance enhancement. So I don't know if you remember, but we literally had 20 exercises written on this board behind us in regards to, okay, how do we start somebody on the journey to do a Nordic Curl?
Right. Yeah.
And we got to the point where we have, some football athletes that can rep out 20 reps on the Nordic Curl. So we're like, all right, how do we progress the Nordic Curl? And then it came to a single leg Nordic Curl, which we deemed the Bronx Curl. And I always feel like it adds a little extra oomph if you kind of name an exercise after maybe the location. Russian bear training sounds a lot better than just, German volume or German volume training with the Bulgarian split squat. Or, we do the Icelandic crunch or something like that. It's always going to give the athletes a little bit more interest in the training. So, we deemed it the Bronx Curl. But we were just really trying to look at, okay, how do we progress an athlete who has probably neglected hamstring, glute, and low back strength all of their life? How do we get them from that point towards getting towards a Nordic Curl? And then, as you know, and as I've said before, like, how do we advance the Nordic Curl? Are we going to weight it? Are we going to do pauses? Are we going to do, different positions with our hips? Are we going to try and get to a single leg variation? How are we going to use the glute ham raise from both a bilateral, a unilateral, a half glute ham raise, a full glute ham raise? How do all those pieces fit together to enhance our posterior chain strength? And I think that's something that you and I went back and forth on a lot and really worked together on. And it ended up us having a good amount of our football athletes, as well as a lot of our other athletes, being able to achieve a Nordic Curl, whether it be male, female, what have you. And it's something that the athletes really get behind. Unfortunately, ESPN, Bleacher Report, everybody who I've tried to tag has not gotten on the Ford Ham train, but maybe this podcast will be the tipping point, as you say, to get us to the big time.
Hopefully. But yeah, hey, you're right about naming something after a place, because it's like you hear the word Bronx and you're like, that's a crazy fucking place. You hear Bronx Curl, you're like, oh wait, time out, coach, what are we about to do right now? Hold on.
You know it's tough.
Yeah.
It's not.
Yeah. And it ain't a walk in Central Park. It's not the Central Park Curl.
No, it's a Bronx Curl, man. It's tough.
Yeah, but no, we did have a list of progressions. Now, forget, there was some that we eliminated. I think we started like partial range and stuff.
I think we kind of we realized just through trial and error, like, okay, what was really a good enough input or intense enough to actually trigger a response? Because I think we all learn like a physio ball leg curl, for example, right? Is kind of like a posterior chain movement that we all learn early on. And we're like, okay, it's, both a hip extension exercise as well as a knee flexion exercise. But then you realize it's not that intense. And for someone outside of a beginner, or maybe someone who's just getting introduced to the weight room, it doesn't really serve the value that maybe we're looking to get. So it's like, okay, how do we get someone in a Nordic Curl? Like, okay, let's utilize some isometrics, right? We're going to get 10 to 15 degrees of strengthening in both directions. So how do we do different isometrics in that Nordic Curl position? Okay, we can do it from a leg straight position. We can do it halfway up. We can do it almost at a fully contracted position. And more so than just like build the hamstrings, but develop that neuromuscular control to contract their hamstrings as hard as they absolutely can in those positions. Sometimes I think, and we're training the brain to recruit those muscles, to recruit those motor units more so than we're actually just training the hamstrings, right? I think we're training the whole system overall. So we kind of had our progression, and the isometrics were big. Obviously, people have been doing Nordic Curl eccentrics for years and years and years, but getting proficient in those isometrics, learning how to contract the hamstrings hard, I think that was probably one of the biggest turning points in regards to getting a lot of our athletes over the hump.
Yeah.
Because if you just do that eccentric, it almost seems like you have good control, and then you hit that point, and it's like you literally just the body shuts down. It's like the muscle spindles don't want to contract anymore, and then the whole hamstring posterior chain just turns off. But if you're able to get into that position with an isometric, and then, okay, I'm in control now, I'm going to contract my glutes and hams, and I'm going to hold it for 10, 15 seconds, what have you. I feel like that's the biggest, movement that has allowed us to get over the hump.
Yeah. I like the progression. I like that progression. And then when you went into the, what did you call it? The pumps out of the bottom?
Yeah. I mean, obviously you're going to be weaker.
Those were hard as hell. I felt those.
Position,
yeah,
as well as the most contracted position. So if we got all the way down to the Nordic, while you're still extended at the hip, you're fully extended at the knee, where it's going to be in a weaker position. So it's like, okay, let me just lightly use my hands, contract the hamstrings in that position for 10, 15, 20 pumps, like you said. And that, again, it just trains the hamstrings to contract in a weakened position. It trains the brain to recruit the hamstrings in a weakened position. And that was hugely helpful too.
Yeah. It's like hiring someone for a job that didn't once exist. Now it does. That's the only way I can.
Absolutely. Those motor units were never used. I mean, because how many, football players in high school are doing Nordic curls or doing any posterior chain work? If you get them to do legs in high school, you're doing a good job. But how many of them are doing targeted hamstring work? Probably not. So those motor units, like you said, they've never been recruited. They've never been hired. So all of a sudden we do 2 sets of 5 Nordic curls, and these guys, can barely get off the toilet the next day. So it's definitely got to be taken in a slow cook approach.
Yeah, definitely. Talking about lower body, since we're talking hamstrings and stuff, let's talk about squats now. I think your squat progression has been great. You definitely helped me out be a better coach in how I progress it now. I have a note here, and I told you earlier, it says from freshman year to Zerchers. I feel like no one does Zerchers because it's one of those things where it hurts, right? I'm not going to lie. Very uncomfortable. People deem it to be quote unquote non-sport specific, but hearing the way we talked about it and the way you implemented it with the football guys at Fordham, I felt like it served great purpose. So if you just want to talk about your progression, if you have a progression, or if it's just something where it's like, hey, you look good, let's move on to here. Because we've done stuff like that where we talked at times like, hey, Fultese looks great. We're going to put him on back squat. All right, cool. And your thoughts on progressing into more extreme squat patterns.
Yes, I think it's a combination of both, right? So I'm going to have a continuum of squats, and the next step is always going to be a little bit more demanding from a mobility perspective than the previous one. So let's say that like the beginning of my, squat progression is going to be a heels elevated goblet squat. That's kind of the lowest hanging fruit, where ankle mobility is taken out. The weight on a goblet is going to be a little bit lighter. The anterior load of the goblet of the dumbbell or kettlebell is going to put them in a little bit more of an upright position so that they can achieve full depth and they can train their knees, hips, and ankles through a pretty good range of motion. So that would probably be more of like my entry point into the continuum. Probably at the other end of the continuum is going to be something like an overhead squat, right? Where shoulder flexion, thoracic extension, core stability, upper back strength, hip mobility, leg strength, ankle mobility is all going to be challenged. So that's kind of like the hardest and the easiest part of that squat continuum. And then you only kind of get to that next level by demonstrating competence. So we will start a lot of times with a tempo goblet squat. Can we control the goblet squat down on a 5-second, a 6-second eccentric? Can we pause for 2 seconds in the very bottom where our hamstrings are covering our calves and maintain that upright torso, and then drive up with core tightness and not looking like a wet noodle? Okay, we've shown that we can do that. Let's move on to the next progression. Yep. And the next progression after a goblet squat would be something like a hands-free front squat for me. So I really like getting that barbell in the front rack position with our arms extended, because the arms extended allows us to really emphasize an upright torso. Because if we have any fold forward at all with that torso, the bar is going to come down. So that really teaches the athlete an upright torso. It really teaches the athlete to maintain core tightness, and it really teaches them where they need to position that barbell. And again, I really like utilizing tempos. Not so much. I do like utilizing them for athletic performance enhancement, and we've all been influenced in a positive way by people like Charles Poliquin emphasizing tempos, and Cal Dietz in his triphasic program. So we've all been grateful to have those guys emphasize utilizing tempos, but I think there also can be utilized a lot to teach. Because when you slow things down, regardless if it's in the weight room or sport, you're able to really dial in on the correct form. And then as you understand that form a little bit better, okay, now we can employ, some different techniques for explosiveness or velocity-based training. But that's going to come a little bit later. So after we do a hands-free front squat and we utilize tempo with that, then we'll actually get into a clean grip front squat where the athlete will be in that, front rack position. And we're always going to be cueing a lot of things from our chin position, our neck position, our upper back position, our elbow position, engagement of our core, and how to brace effectively. And then again, we always want to get in that full range of motion with our hamstrings covering our calves, upright torso. I'm a big proponent of full range of motion squats. It comes up again, but Charles Poliquin was a big influence on me. A lot of the strength coaches that I've worked with and conversed with over the years were big proponents of full range of motion squats. So I know the debate is kind of up in regards to performance enhancement when it comes to, okay, are partial range of motion squats beneficial or full range of motion squats beneficial? And you can probably find a research article to support both claims. I've just always been a proponent of, full range of motion, full benefit. It seems to me that the hypertrophy associated with full range of motion is a little bit greater than half range squats. And you're kind of getting a more balanced development of adductors, quads. You get that extra VMO engagement in the bottom of a squat. Your glutes are going to be engaged. And I just think that having an athlete strong in all ranges of motion is going to be more beneficial in the long term. I do think, half ranges of motion in the squats can be beneficial for, maybe increasing force output and can be used in a targeted sense at certain times of the year. But a vast majority of our year, regardless of the type of squat we're doing, it's going to be a full range of motion squat. And I have to be honest with you, a lot of our athletes will stay in that clean grip front rack position front squat for most of their athletic career here. And I like it because of the upper back development. I like it with the core involvement. I like that it allows us to maintain an upright torso, get a full range of motion, and it has a direct carryover to our clean. And with a lot of our different athletic teams, we will utilize Olympic progressions. And the clean is one that I really enjoy utilizing with a lot of my athletes. Not all teams and not all athletes will clean, but it is something that we do emphasize as far as one of our KPIs. And if a sport and an athlete can effectively do a clean, I'm going to employ it. And the front squat is going to be a big part of that. If an athlete does really, really well with the front squat, has that upright torso, can get the full range of motion with the hamstrings covering the calves. And then another role that plays a part of it is the weight in which they're moving. We've had some athletes get up towards a 500-pound front squat, and it becomes almost a chore to even breathe with that weight coming down on your chest, upper shoulder area. And if you've done front squats at a pretty appreciable weight, if you have that barbell 1 inch this way or 1 inch that way, there are some times when you feel pretty lightheaded and you might feel like you're passing out. Like it's just sitting wrong. No matter what you do that day, it's just sitting wrong. So what we'll do is with the athletes that have the mobility, that have the rep integrity, that make carbon copies of each and every single rep, we will move to the back squat. We have some athletes who back squat, and it just allows a little bit more comfortability as far as avoiding that rack position that you can't support as much weight in a front squat as you can a back squat. So for some of our more advanced athletes, we will employ the back squat to continue our lower body development. And then I think the back squat also lends itself towards, velocity-based training a little bit better. Sometimes with the front squat, it can be hard to really accelerate through the top just with the positioning of the barbell. Now, you absolutely can, but I think the back squat just lends itself to be a little bit easier to employ some of those squatting techniques, whether we're utilizing bands or chains or jump squats. Just having that back squat position will help with that. And you brought up Zerchers, and I really love the Zercher, but I would probably put that probably before the front squat in its place on the continuum. When you have that weight sitting in the crooks of your elbow and it's a little bit closer to your core, you're actually able to squat a little bit deeper with a little bit more of an upright torso because it's closer to kind of that fulcrum point of your hips.
Okay.
And we utilized a lot of Zercher squats. One, because I kind of like getting these guys to do some tough things. Two, just the overall development it would give to the whole torso as a whole. But we utilized it a lot during COVID because we were outside training with barbells and plates.
Yeah,
and we're
no
like,
racks.
okay, we can deadlift, but we don't have squat stands outside. You know, and I didn't feel comfortable with people lifting up the barbell, cleaning on the turf, putting that a heavy barbell on their back. How are they going to get there? Trusting spotters to lift it up. So I'm like, hey, we're going to teach these guys how to Zercher squat. I think the Zercher squat was developed in prison without squat racks. We were outside with just barbells and dumbbells, wheeling them out every day. Let's Zercher squat.
Yeah.
We would do different tempos. We would do different complexes in regards to, okay, let's Zercher squat and then sprint, or let's Zercher squat and then jump, and do different supersets like that. But the guys really did take to the Zercher squats. And I've still got plenty of great videos on my phone of guys Zercher squatting 405, pausing with, heavy weights in the bottom of a Zercher squat position. And outside of a select few, not many coaches will utilize that variation, but it's got a whole lot of value.
It does, yeah. Especially with low back development. So somebody writes something about low back looking like, what do you say, lead pipes sticking out your low back or some shit.
I used to say, I wanted our erector spines to look like two meatball marinaras going down the side of our spine. Two 12-inch double meatball marinaras. But the Zercher's got a lot of value. And we even utilized it in a split squat variation, for core development. It's
isometrics, yeah, those were tough.
It's just something that is not utilized enough, to be honest with you. And it's one of those things that hits so many things that would help athletic enhancement. You could do carries with Zerchers. You could do isometrics. I believe it's a good tool to put on that continuum of teaching someone how to bilateral squat correctly. I noticed that it's really good for basketball athletes with really they don't have that core integrity yet. They've got really long limbs. Getting someone to Zercher squat with their heels elevated, I think, is a really, really good variation for some of those taller athletes that I've seen some coaches utilize, but needs to be utilized more in that teaching progression. So we kind of talked about, the back squats. And then I do like the overhead squat. It's interesting. One of our athletes has really done a good job with the overhead squats lately because we've been teaching him how to snatch effectively. The clean just wasn't a good variation for him. So we were utilizing a power snatch. And I said, okay, now it's time to start to really develop the overhead squat if you want to maximize, your snatch ability. And he's taken to it. But that is extremely challenging from a mobility perspective, extremely challenging to have that overhead stability. But, he was snatching 235 the other day. And that's not something you see every day at the collegiate level for someone who is only using weightlifting to enhance their athletic ability. They are not an Olympic weightlifter. So he's doing a pretty good job with that. But I think we all kind of utilize the overhead squat either as something to help, develop mobility, shoulder stability, upper back strength. We could do different types of variations from an overhead squat position. But It's something that I would see on one end of the spectrum, whereas my goblet squat kind of starts that bilateral squat progression.
It's funny you mentioned overhead squat at the end there, because I would have thought that would have been a little bit earlier. But my problem personally, when I overhead squat, I do it off. I mean, you know what I'm doing these days, man. Snatch, clean, squat, right?
Good program.
Is the Tspine extension. And I feel like I'm using too much shoulder. I think I got hypermobile shoulders, man. Them things get all the way back there. And I just don't have the extension at the T-spine, man. What are some things that you've seen? Or I guess, you know, with the guy you're doing the overhead squat with now, you know, what are some things you work on to improve on that T-spine extension, if there is anything? Or is it just a thing that with time and age, I'm 34, my T-spine might be starting to lock up on me and the keys are being thrown away, so I don't even know. But what are some things you think can help improve? Like, is T-spine extension a limiting factor for overhead strength?
I think so. I think it's something that I've neglected for so long. Because I think, you know, you and I were kind of similar in that we've had, you know, some lower back pain. And I think the first thing that we look at is the hips, right?
Right, yeah.
We're like, okay, let's look at hip internal rotation, external rotation. Let me look at my hip flexors. Let me look at my glute activation. Okay, those are okay. I'm working on those. Let me work on my core. Let me do my dead bugs. Let me do my suitcase carry. Let me make sure that, you know, my core is correct. But I think a lot of us forget about the T-spine. And I think its relation to both low back and the hips is understated. I think its relation to the upper body is undervalued as well. And I think it's kind of hard because it's hard to achieve a lot of thoracic extension in the drills that we do. You know, that's where I see a lot of the FRC concepts having a lot of value. But I also feel like just the knowledge of trying to apply it to some of our bigger movements or our more traditional movements has provided me a ton of value. And I really, it was kind of like that light going off moment when I was working with Dmitry Klokov just about a month ago, you know, when Giorgio and I went to the clinic and, you know, he was teaching us his way of performing Olympic lifts and the positions he was having us get into in the front squat, in the back squat, in the bottom of the clean, really taught me that I was not achieving nor coaching the chin, the head, and the thoracic spine position that you really need to be as strong and as mobile as you can in a sport as demanding to be strong and mobile as Olympic weightlifting.
Right.
You know, and we utilize those Olympic variations with a lot of our different athletes, whether it be a snatch, a clean, or any of its derivatives. But until you learn from someone like Dmitry Klokov, a world champion, about really getting into the right position, I had no idea the thoracic and upper back strength it really takes to do those movements correctly. I mean, he had us on 40 kilos shaking like a leaf, to be honest with you. But just his cues with his chin, his upper back, it really changed my perspective on not just setting the feet, the hips, the core, because I think that's what we focus a lot on. But where are we positioning our eyes? Where are we positioning our shoulders? Where are we positioning our upper back and T-spine to also make sure that we're utilizing the correct muscles? Because if I have forward head posture, if I have rounded upper back, thoracic area, and I don't have the correct mobility to get into that correct posture, I'm not going to be able to, I'm going to have to compensate somewhere else. So whether it be the shoulder, like you said, you know, maybe having hypermobile shoulders or, you know, possibly kyphotic through that upper back that makes those shoulders round a little bit more and impinges that joint a little bit more. Maybe that's going to be at the root of not having the correct thoracic extension. Or for someone like me, it was like having undue back pain. But ever since I have been more cognizant in every single exercise, whether that be a back extension with even a light dowel, or me doing back squats or me doing front squats, being cognizant of my chin and head position, as well as my thoracic extension, my back has never felt better. And it really allows us to get in that position that we've been trying so hard to coach with a lot of our athletes.
Yeah. I've been trying to focus on T-spine stuff a lot. I mean, you see me, I was doing a lot of, like, you turn around, talk to me, you see me coming to that upright torso. I mean, I was just trying to work on it, but
it's hard. I don't know if there's like, because some of the exercises that we've all been taught, like no monies or floor slides or open books or getting on the peanut and doing a thoracic extension or a foam roller. I don't know if those are like, I don't know if the input of those drills are enough to actually change our biomechanics, to change the structure of our skeleton, which is essentially what we're trying to do when we're working on thoracic extension, because our skeleton has been so programmed and the inputs of sitting in the chair or having bad posture or having that forward head position that this becomes my new normal. And it's like, okay, what input do I have to give my body to achieve the opposite, where I do have that upright torso? And I think it really comes from something intense, like an intense thoracic car that's done with FRC concepts. It's done with a tempoed front squat where you've got the world champion Dmitry Klokov really queuing up your position. And you feel like you got bones in your back moving in ways in which they've never moved before. You feel sore muscles in places you didn't even think you had places. And it really was a light bulb moment to be like, the front squat is an upper back movement.
Yeah.
For me, it is, whereas my legs are not the weak point. My core is not the weak point. My mobility in my lower body is not the weak point. For me, it's that thoracic extension. It's that upper back drill. Yeah. Same thing with the back squat. For me, it's not even a leg strength issue anymore. It is a upper back strength. When I'm teaching these guys or teaching myself and some of these guys how to do a back extension, the glutes and hamstrings and low backs are going to work. Okay. But can I cue these guys up with chin? Can I cue these guys up with their chest to reverse all the sitting and the rounding and the texting that these guys do so that we do have more optimal posture? Because a posture is really going to be an expression of a lot of things just outside of, how we sit or stand. It's going to relate to our emotions. It's going to relate to our mindset. It's going to relate to how the body moves overall. So I've definitely become increasingly interested in the posture and trying to really make sure that we have, I don't know if there's an optimal posture, but I think there's things that we can do if athletes have pain to help with their posture, because there's certain exercises we can do if someone's got a bum shoulder or, a hurt shoulder, we can do in an hour, but the other 23 hours, what's the posture like? What are the inputs that they're putting inside their body for the other 23 hours? We've got to do something in here, or at least put it inside their mind to move in a way that just allows them to have good inputs throughout the entire day. Yeah.
It's like you're downloading porn and for 23 hours. And then for that 1 hour, you're trying to upload great. And it doesn't sync. You don't got the, you don't got the hard drive space to upload that much. Yeah.
You take 10,000 steps a day, what are those inputs like? Those ones might make more of a difference than just, the hour of core work we do here or anything that we do. We have to make sure that we're putting in enough of those right inputs.
Yeah. I try to do those foam rollers and the peanuts. It feels good, but it's all passive. It's like you said, if the intensity is not there, if it's not active, then you're not really doing stuff. So I started laying on my stomach, but I would go on my stomach, hands across my low back, and I just try to extend T-spine. 99% of the time, I'm going to extend my low back, but I'm always trying to go back down, nose in the ground and trying to just focus on, try to lift everything above the nipples to the top of my head off the ground. Bang. If I can do that, then I feel good. If I feel the bones cracking, like you said, right?
Yeah.
I'll do my overhead squats and I'm just focusing on just keeping my pelvis where it's at, keeping the bar where it's at, open up the chest. And again, I'm feeling pop, 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 pop on the way down,
Yeah. There's a great quote by Gary Ward, and that's somebody who I've been trying to learn from a lot. But essentially what he says, and I hope I don't butcher it, but it's bones act, muscles react. So if we can put ourselves in the right position from a skeletal standpoint, the muscles are going to do their jobs. So if we can really get those athletes in the correct position from a skeleton perspective, the right muscles are going to fire correctly. And if we can consistently fire those right muscles, it's just going to become our new posture, our new norm, so that every input that we put in throughout the rest of the day is facilitating health, is facilitating performance.
Mm-hmm. And I got to agree with you with the front squat being upper back dominant, because most guys fail when they just can't hold the bar up. Posture crumbles and then bar goes into the crash bar. But Anybody that disagrees with that, I'd say, film your guys at a heavy set and see their posture. And then that question may answer itself. But that's good stuff, man. I loved everything you talked about. T-spine, I feel like I could talk about that for days, man. Because it's just been like a new topic of mine. I mean, you and I, we talked about it a lot at the office, but it's just been one thing I've been trying to hone in on this summer. And it's like I just can't figure out what it is,
I think it's like at least I can only speak for myself, but I was so enamored with the hips, and we're always doing most of the muscles or most of the movements that we choose as strength and conditioning coaches are going to be hip dominant, knee dominant exercises.
Hip drive.
We're always looking at, the squats, the cleans, the deadlifts. And while those are extremely important, like I think it just creates, or doesn't, we just have such a focus on the glutes, hamstrings, quads, and maybe like the anterior core, but we don't talk about the T-spine enough. Yeah. And like you said, working with baseball, working with swimming, working with some of our more overhead athletes or football athletes who are going to take a lot of pounding on the shoulder joints. If we don't address the T-spine, I think we're doing a big disservice.
I would say that goes for both extension and rotational, because I think my rotational capacity has decreased over time. That's just what happens after the age of 30, right?
Yeah, but it's something that you and I don't do as much anymore. Like how often are we, throwing a baseball anymore? How often are we really doing things that demand rotation? So I think it's probably important as we get a little bit older, and it's something that's important with our athletes as well to like, okay, we need to have some type of rotational movement in our program, regardless if we're a quarterback, baseball athlete, or a swimmer for that matter, because being able to disassociate the hips or the pelvis from the shoulders and the T-spine, it's just going to allow us to be better athletes overall. So I think the med ball work is extremely critical. I just wrote on my Twitter the other day, like I think one of the most valuable tools a strength coach can have is a wall. I
saw that. That was a good post.
I love being able to go outside and we've got our med balls and we can do different rotational throws. And the wall allows us to do that and have that recoil with both our core absorbing as well as creating force, being able to disassociate our hips from our upper body. I think it's something that's it's got a lot of value and it's free, right? If you got a wall, you got a med ball, you can get a lot of good work in.
Yeah. Just to reiterate, brick wall, right? Don't mess the sheet. Don't mess up the sheetrock at the crib, man. Mama's gonna be pissed.
Exactly. Make sure it's a brick wall. Go to the park or something.
Right, throwing the 8-pound med ball against a sheetrock wall. God bless you, man. But this is good stuff. Very educational. I love it. But before we wrap things up, Coach, I want to talk about nutrition because you kind of sparked my interest at Fordham about nutrition because you were heavy into it when we first met. Smart as hell about it, even though you say you're not, you're still learning, but I took a lot away from you. Talk about some things that you believe are, top choices to help athletes or people in general live and compete at a high level. And I know we always talk about, hey, if your nutrition's not 100% excellent, you shouldn't be talking about supplements and that extra stuff, which I believe in and I continue to say to this day. And like Giorgio said, no one's a purple belt, we're all white belts in nutrition because we still don't know how to eat well in general. But just talk about some things that you believe are the go-tos to help people live and compete at a high level.
Absolutely. Nutrition has been a passion of mine for a long time now, and I've always appreciated being able to bounce ideas off you in regards to nutrition. And it really comes down to quality, right? The quality in which of the food that we're putting into our bodies. It's a quote that I stole from my time at Western Michigan, which was elite in, elite out. And that goes into all aspects of our life. And it was in reference to elite effort in, elite performance out. But I firmly believe that in regards to nutrition as well. And it really is the X factor at the collegiate level. And it probably is the X factor at every level, to be honest with you. Mm-hmm. And you would know more about, how the NFL guys eat. We all know that there's plenty of high school athletes out there that are probably not fueling themselves with quality nutrients. And I see that at the collegiate level as well. The first thing that we always want to make sure that we emphasize to anybody is the quality of the food that they put inside their body. And it's a very intimate relationship with food, right? It's something that's actually being ingested and assimilated by your body. Mm-hmm. It's not just dirt or something that's being on the exterior of your skin. It's something that's going inside of our body. So we should really want to put the highest quality food inside our body. And that doesn't mean like it has to be organic this or grass-fed that, or, be wild yak meat from this hidden mountain in, nowhere, Canada or something like that. But you and I would always joke with a lot of the athletes, like, listen, if it's got an ingredient label, you should be pretty skeptic. Mm-hmm. If it's got a commercial for it, you should probably be skeptical. If there's a cartoon character on the box, run the other way. Yeah. Because those are not going to be the things that you want to put inside your body for optimal performance. And a lot of the youth athletes, a lot of the collegiate athletes, the body is so forgiving and they can just really do whatever they want and feel okay. But if you're really trying to achieve optimal performance, if you're really trying to achieve optimal health, the food that you put inside your body, the fluid that you consume to hydrate your body, it really becomes something that is of paramount importance. So what we're trying to emphasize to our athletes and anyone that we work with is the quality in which we put of the food in which we put inside our body. So I'm constantly testing these guys on, hey, can you name me 3 elite protein sources? And inevitably, there's some athletes who just don't know what quality protein sources are.
Peanut butter. Right? That's what they say sometimes, right?
Yeah, like they just, the first thing that they say is peanut butter. And, we joke about it all the time. But whoever perpetuated, this idea that peanut butter was the athletic, the premier athletic choice for protein, should get a medal because they have really propagated that to all the athletes. But to me, to the guys in my room, peanut butter is not an elite protein source. Typically, it's going to be some type of meat, egg, or fish, some type of protein that is going to deliver all of the essential amino acids that are going to help the body recover from a training session. So educating the athletes first and foremost on what an elite protein source goes a long way. We want to opt for something that is baked or grilled or boiled as opposed to fried, breaded, and got a whole bunch of cream sauces added to it. Then we want to talk about what's an optimal fat source. I think there still is to this day, people are afraid of fat, and there's so much benefit that comes from consuming the optimal or the healthiest fat. We're teaching these athletes the benefits that come from the omega-3s in your salmon, your sardines, your mackerel, your herring, the fish oil, the omega-3s that are going to come from olive oil, avocados, cashews, walnuts, almonds, Brazil nuts. We try and make sure that we provide these guys with great snack options inside of the locker room where they can get that dose of healthy fat, because it's going to be so good for their joints. It's going to be so good for their immune system. It's going to be so good for their hormonal environment that it's going to allow them to feel good and perform at their very best. Uh-huh. And fats are something that a lot of people shy away from, either because they're afraid of extra calories or they just don't know. They think that consuming fat is going to lead to them getting fat, when in reality, that's not the case at all. Mm-hmm. And then, our final macronutrient is carbohydrates. And this is something that we've got a lot of access to here in America, is any type of refined carbohydrate that you could ever want, with cereal, pasta, breads, bagels, things like that. But I try and get my athletes to opt for things like potatoes, things like rice, things like oatmeal. And, there is a little bit of pasta in there as well. Some athletes can get away with it. Some athletes can't get away from it if you're really trying to optimize body composition. And carbohydrates are typically going to be dependent upon how lean we are from a body composition perspective. And we've done a better job of taking body composition on our football athletes a little bit more regularly and monitoring their body fat percentages. And that will help us in regards to where our macronutrients need to be, what focus we need to have in regards to our post-workout replenishment. And carbohydrates are going to play a large role, in that differentiation of athletes of different body composition. And then finally, and probably most importantly, is trying to get our athletes to consume more fruits and vegetables. And I'm amazed to this day that even though our 18 to 22-year-old athletes are technically called adults, some of them are still acting like children and not consuming enough fruits and vegetables. Mm-hmm. So trying to find a few different vegetables that we can vary and include in our diet, ones that they like or at least don't despise, that they can add into their nutrition on a daily basis. Because and I'm sure everybody listening knows that there's so much benefit that can come from fiber, micronutrients, minerals from vegetable and fruit intake that will just keep us healthier, and it's going to help our athletes be leaner. It's going to help our athletes fill in some of those gaps that we may be missing in regards to vitamins and minerals and all those micronutrients that we are still learning about on a day-to-day basis right now. We want to try and have a salad a day. We want to try and include a fruit or vegetable every single meal that we consume, just to fill in all of those spaces that we may miss in our regular nutrition program. And just kind of how you alluded to in the beginning, there's not once did I ever mention a creatine, a protein powder, a weight gainer, a pre-workout, a beta alanine, any type of supplement. We want to establish great habits in our nutrition on a day-to-day basis that allows us to fill in those gaps before we ever have to rely on a protein powder or a creatine or any of these other supplements that are exactly what they're claimed to be. They should be a supplement to an already pristine nutrition program. And not till you really reach a pretty high level of performance inside the weight room and on the athletic field do any of those supplements ever really need to come into play. Not to say that they don't work, because we all know that creatine has been studied time and time again, and it works. I don't think it's necessary for an athlete to take that until they reach a certain level of development. Same thing with maybe someone's ingestion of caffeine. Has it been shown to delay fatigue? 100%, absolutely. But until an athlete is fueling themselves appropriately with protein, carbohydrates, fat, fruits, vegetables, hydrating themselves, establishing great sleep habits. We didn't even talk about sleep, and I know you and I are big fans of that. Yeah. Until they're doing all of those things, filling in the big rocks that will really move the needle in regards to athletic development, recovery, and progression, do we ever need to worry about those little things like supplementation? That can come later on. Our strongest athletes are the ones who focus on those big rocks, and they do them consistently. I think it's those people who are looking for those shortcuts, those easy ways, are the athletes that ask us about weight gainers right away.
Yeah. Weight gainers. Go. Which protein powder should I drink, coach, to gain weight? Just eat some food, bro. That's what I used to tell them all the time. Just eat some food. There's more calories in that than a damn protein shake, man. 150 calories ain't going to save your day.
What I'm doing now is I'm trying to utilize MyFitnessPal with the athletes more, because I was utilizing food frames a lot, and taking pictures. But what I'm trying to get them to do now is fill everything out in MyFitnessPal. And it can be difficult because they don't really necessarily know what ounces or grams are. But there are certain selections on MyFitnessPal where you can just say chicken breast or 1 cucumber or something like that. And now we can add all the calories up so that they can see if we're practicing and lifting and you weigh 220 pounds, but you want to get to 240, they might be able to, it allows for them to see how few calories they are eating to elicit that growth in their muscle tissue. Okay. So it's, instead of just like looking at the picture, now we're actually getting some numeric values as opposed, to see if like, okay, we're not eating enough to facilitate growth. We don't need a weight gainer. What we need to do is have the discipline to go to the dining hall 5 times a day, put high quality food in our body, recover like we need to do it consistently. But let's take a look at MyFitnessPal. Let's see if you really think you're eating as much as you say you are.
That's valuable stuff. You want to talk about sleep real quick?
Yeah, I mean,
gems in there. I'm huge on sleep.
You're the man when it comes to the sleep, because you were utilizing the Sleep Cycle app.
Yeah.
And you were utilizing that a lot with water polo here. And it was really great to see the trends over time. And the people who really progressed the most were those who were really optimizing their recovery. And we know that even though we all like those, foam rollers or the guns that, massage our stuff, no recovery is going to be as great as sleep. And if they sold all the benefits of a great night's sleep in a pill, it would be the most widely bought pill in the entire world. Mm-hmm. So really emphasizing good sleep habits, I think, is something that you and I really tried to emphasize with the athletes, and just strategies to do it. Okay, are we going to listen to, we're going to try and avoid our cell phone, our computer, our TV 30 minutes, 1 hour before bedtime so that we can avoid blue light exposure, get that melatonin production so that we can get a more sound sleep. Hey, are we keeping our room at an optimal temperature? Because it's going to be a little bit easier to fall asleep and stay asleep if it's a little bit chillier as opposed to warmer in our room. Hey, what's our routine going to look like prior to bed that is going to allow us to decompress and relax? Are we reading or eating, or I'm sorry, reading in bed would be fine, but are we eating in bed? Are we on our computer in bed? Are we playing video games in bed as opposed to reading, maybe some type of novel, or doing some type of light stretching or meditative exercise to allow for our body to get into a parasympathetic state and more optimally go to bed? So teaching different athletes different strategies to help them go to bed, I think really help them. And there's so many different things that we can do because, the sleep really is another X factor in regards to recovery and very similar to nutrition, and one of those big rocks that we want to make sure that we're moving and making part of our program as a whole.
I should go get a PhD in sleep, man, because I feel like I studied so much and I learned so much. What I found was freshmen always sleep the worst because one, it's a new social context to them. They want to hang out. Plus, two, for our I don't want to say benefit, but for our world at Fordham, being in New York City, I mean, as an 18-year-old, shoot, good luck trying to keep them on the leash, man. There's 1 million people, 9 million people there, right? 10 million, something like that. But so that was one thing for them. They just didn't know how to socially present themselves when it came time to hanging out, disciplining themselves with sleep, schoolwork, and sport. That, and two, biggest complaint outside of social environment was dorm room. Dorm rooms are hot. They suck. Sleeping with a non-athlete, right? They call them NARPs up there. That was always tough. But over time, what I saw was the seniors and juniors slept better than freshmen. Sophomores were like up and down. But seniors knew how to socialize. They knew when it was time to turn up. They knew when it was time to, take it down. You'd see week after week, hey, okay, this is probably a party weekend. Okay, this is midterm weekend. I get that. This is finals weekend. I get that. But over time, that's what I found. And plus, seniors, when they got the choice to sleep in those off-campus apartments, I guess they had their own rooms, air conditioners in the window, so they were able to sleep a lot better. So I feel like those are pluses and minuses when it comes to assessing sleep with the college athletes. So those are the only gems I took away from it. Other than that, nothing too sexy, nothing too crazy.
I think just being able to have that data, though, like you emphasize with that team, it's like you may think that you're sleeping okay, and then you look and see how restless you were, or how much you were actually moving, or how poor your sleep was. And then obviously what gets measured gets managed. So then it's on the athlete to then do a little bit more homework on their part to say, like, okay, I value sleep. I value my performance in the weight room, on the field. What can I do to get better? What am I going to do? Am I going to invest in blackout curtains that are cost $20? Am I going to be consistent on the weekends when I could sleep in a little bit more? I could stay out later. I could sleep in a little bit more. Or I could make the right decision, go to bed a little bit earlier, wake up at the same time, even though I don't have that class or lift or practice commitment. And that's where you kind of see the discipline that happens with a junior or senior. Freshman, sophomore year, like you said, they're in a new environment. They're trying to experience college.
Yeah. There's no curfew. Yeah, there's no parent curfew, nothing, none of that stuff. Yes, mom, I'm home. No, you're not. You're at a bar bathroom, taking that phone call, getting off the phone quick, man.
Absolutely. But that consistency, I think those juniors, seniors, they see that clock ticking, or, they're a little beat up from just college athletics overall, and they're going to try and take advantage of every single modality and strategy that they can. And I got to imagine what I hear in the pros, is that they're doing everything as well. I see these guys really investing in their recovery and their body. I think it just progresses from a freshman in college all the way to, you see Tom Brady and Russell Wilson and what they put into their recovery. LeBron James spending millions of dollars on every little thing to improve recovery or sleep.
And it's crazy because I think college kids should learn now, because I'm thinking about this now. It's kind of, you just mentioned the pros. Like a pro football player's lifespan is what, 3 to 4 years, I think. I think basketball is less than that.
NFL, yeah.
Yeah, NBA, unless you're a highly valued franchise guy like a Durant or a James, it's probably 2 or 1 year. But I was even thinking about it just now. Like college, that's your 4-year window. That's your 4-year resume to develop, to treat yourself like a pro, that 4-year window. And how do you extend that? Well, you learn that stuff early versus I remember, what's his name? Martin Rooney talking about it when we were doing, when I was at preseason with his combine prep. He was telling guys, hey, we got 7 weeks to the combine, guys. If you wasted 4 years of not doing the warm-ups the right way, not lifting the right way, not doing stuff the right way, then guess what? These next 7 weeks are not going to help you test better to get a higher draft position. So I think that's another takeaway for college athletes. Take everything serious from day one. So when you get to, like you said, when that clock's ticking your junior, senior year, you're not like, oh shit, well, hey, I'm going to focus up. I'm going to do everything right now. Well, it's too late now,
Absolutely. I was just saying that to the guys the other day because it came up in the book I was reading. It was like these people who claim to be game players, right? They'll practice at 80, 85%, but they'll turn it up for the game. Mm-hmm. It's like, that doesn't work. You're not going to be prepared for the game. It just has to be who you are, right? Where you are establishing great habits and you're improving upon those habits every step of the way. You're trying to master everything from day one. Now, you're not going to be ready for everything day one, but the intent to get better is there from day one. And we see it in our athletes who are performing the highest now. And everyone wants to know what some of our highest performing athletes are doing differently. It's like they're not doing anything differently. They're just trying their best every single day. And it's who they are. Like there is no off switch for them. They're just trying to do the best that they can every day. And they do it consistently. And doing those things consistently, whether it be sleeping right, eating right, doing a lateral lunge in our warm up correctly, doing an inchworm correctly, doing that Spider-Man with a twist correctly. Those are the guys that have good mobility, because we warm up for 10 minutes a day, every single day. That's, 40 to 50 minutes a week of mobility work. So then someone wonders why they're tight. It's like, well, you've never taken stretch seriously. So what makes you think in the 7-week preparation for the combine thinks that all of a sudden you're going to work some magic when the 200 weeks prior to that, the 4 years, you were not doing it the way it should have been done. Right.
Exactly. Yeah. That's good stuff right there. I like that, man. It's a good episode, man. It's educational. We went from hamstrings to getting your life ready at the end of college, man. Good stuff, Gil. But hey, one last thing before I let you go, man. If you weren't, and you can't say, what'd you say, line cook? You can't say that because you did that already. If you were not a strength and conditioning coach, what other career do you see yourself in? And you can't say teacher. That's ultimate clause. Everyone drops that. That's terrible. Teacher.
That's a good question. To be honest with you, I think I would want to be, it's like, I was pretty close to being a Port Authority police officer at one point in time. But right now, if you ask me that question, I'd want to be working outdoors. I'd want to be either like a construction worker, or I'd want to be like a lumberjack or a woodsman. I would want to be doing something with my hands out in nature. To me,
a farmer.
Yeah, a farmer. Because I think essentially that's what we're doing here, man. It's like we're planting the seeds, and we're not going to have that bountiful harvest until months and years later. But we're growing that crop, we're cultivating that crop until it's going to be that bountiful harvest, like I said. So maybe a farmer, that would be something that I'd want to do as well.
Yeah. I'd love to be. We talked about that. I'd love to be a farmer, man. Just out there raising. What would you say? Getting up early in the morning. Yeah,
early in the morning. And again, it's like we'd be one of those organic farmers. We're not going to have any GMOs. We're going to make sure that we really tend to our crop. And we're going to have a farmers alliance. We're going to be working together. We're going to make sure that you got good crop, I got good crop, so that the cross pollination ensures that we've got the most elite harvest possible.
Waking up what, 4 a.m, make your coffee, get out there, feed the horses, run the tractors. It's 6 o'clock at night, the sun's going down, you're sitting in the rocking chair just like that.
Dude, you would have
hands full of dirt, right?
We used to talk about our hands are too clean, man. We got to make sure we get some dirt underneath our fingernails. And imagine the feeling as the sun's going down, like you put in a good day's work. And we don't even have to read those books on sleep, man, because we would be so good at sleep because we worked ourselves to the bone that entire day.
Hell yeah. And your hands are dirty. You know, you put some good quality work in like a real man, right? That's how we
Exactly.
used to say it, right?
I am no real man. No.
Washing your hands every hour with this COVID shit, man.
Not compared to these farmers, man. These people putting in real work and stuff like that. It's that's what I would want to be, definitely.
Awesome, man. Good stuff. Well, Coach Gil, man, I appreciate you finally getting on the damn podcast, man. It's been too long, and we finally got it done. But no, thank you, and I appreciate it, man.
No, thank you very much, man. It was fun, and obviously we're gonna stay in touch for life, man. I've always appreciated what you've brought to our student athletes, and then just being, like you said, not just a colleague, but a good friend.
Appreciate it, man. Definitely. And yeah, we'll definitely be in touch. Like you said, for a lifetime, and we'll probably do this thing more than 1 time, more than 2 times.
Awesome.
In the future. So I'll talk to you soon. All right.